What is the truth of detoxification? What is it meant to be, and how do we begin that journey?
So I think there's several things to unpack here. So I'll try and keep my thoughts coherent in the detox process.
Yeah.
One of the sad things, perhaps, is that we live in a society now where detox has become necessary and common, really, really common. And when you think about it, like it contains the word like detoxing there's toxins in that conversation.
Yeah.
Which means we've developed so many toxins that we need to detox from. So just naming that is like, okay, here's where we're at in society and humanity. There's a lot of toxins available. Our bodies are going to have to respond to that in some way. We are built to detox a lot, but when you stress your detox pathways over and over and over again by overwhelming amounts of toxins coming in, they get fatigued like anything else. They need a rest. They need a break. But if we don't give the body a break of incoming toxins, it's not long before those filters get stuck. So we can't really talk about detoxing without maybe talking about the liver first. And I would say the liver is probably under the most strain as a collective society than it's ever been before because of the amount of toxins. The liver is one of the main filters of the whole system. And even in Chinese medicine, the liver was looked at as the main organ for stress modulation. And each of the organs in Chinese medicine, many people probably know this now, are consistent with an emotional counterpart. So the liver is anger, frustration, huge amounts of irritability. The liver also governs a lot of smooth flow of emotions for the entire system. So everything we just talked about of needing to evolve as a species into feeling our feelings more, no wonder the liver is under so much strain because it's being asked to do a lot. It's being asked to process, I would say, our cumulative trauma as a culture, as a society, as well as massive amounts of chemical toxins in every way, shape, and form that they come into our bodies through food, through air, through water, medications, all of those things. So when I look at the liver, I think, oh my goodness, we got to help you out. You are working so hard right now. How can we get behind the liver and support it? This is also, I think, one of the reasons why children and young people, the youth, are showing up with fatty liver disease, non-alcoholic fatty liver. Are you kidding me? The only reason that would happen, in my view, is a huge amount of unprocessed emotion from our ancestors and our genetics and massive amounts of toxins being put into the body at alarming rates that, of course, the liver would have to buffer itself in some way. It's just a response.
The Cheetos don't help.
No Cheetos.
The liver is like, what are you giving me right now?
What is this? Yeah.
What is this yellow number 5? What do I even do with that? Right? So once it gets stuck in there, then what? We take a breath collectively, individually. I mean, it starts with us.
Yeah.
Right. So detox is one human at a time.
Yeah, it does. It starts with us. So, there's many, many things. And we could go into the details a little bit more if you want, but
let's go.
I would say the liver, if we're starting there, there's this interesting thing. I've been thinking about this a lot the last couple of years. So just like you said, like online right now, I see it rampantly. There's a lot of knowledge out there for detoxing, which is amazing. And it's not the full story at all, because your liver is only one part of this beautiful orchestration of biology, that it is part of that sequence from head to toe, that if you only focus on the liver, and perhaps if you pushed on the liver pretty hard by doing tons of liver detoxes because you saw online that was the thing to do, or I'm saying it too, you got to detox the liver, like hang with me, don't take action just yet. You want to consider that the body as a whole is one unit. So if you push on something, there's going to be a response or a reaction somewhere else. So you want to take a holistic approach and take a wider lens. What else might be going on here? And this is, I think, why some people that have done deep liver detoxes and liver cleanses have only gotten so far, because they didn't work on the rest of the body. And the other counterpart to this that I've been finding fascinating is if we go back to the energy and the emotions of the liver, anger in this case, let's say you do a huge liver cleanse, herbals, homeopathics, some castor oil packs, like all the different things that are available. If you haven't addressed the suppressed anger of your life in some way, shape, or form, in your genetic past or your lived experience, do you think your liver is actually going to let a lot of those toxins go? It's going to stay stuck. You might offload some, But if the higher up chain of command from a mental emotional point of view, the physical is the last one. If that is not addressed on some level, that liver is probably still going to hang on to quite a bit of toxicity. I'm not saying don't do it, but the next level of detoxification is the energetics and the emotions, not just the physical organ.
That's a really good starting place. So I can reflect back to when I've done coffee enemas, and even when I used like super clean water, mold-free, completely clean coffee. When I would do and I haven't done one in quite some time, just because intuitively I feel like it's not good for me to do right now. I'm just listening to my body. When I would do them sometimes, I would be very angry that day. And I would be like, what is the problem? Like, I enjoyed the rush of the caffeine, that it bypasses the portal vein. It goes in supposedly, I guess, through some scientific research, they can validate this. I wonder how you feel, where it actually can clean out some of the colon and some of the lower GI. But I would notice that I would be irritated on some of those days. And so from my own anecdotal experience, I can totally dovetail on what you're saying with the liver and anger, because there'd be no other way for me to describe it as I had an edge when I detoxed through the coffee enemas that I normally would not have had.
Yeah.
What is that?
Well, that's part of the liver detoxing some of the anger. It's clearing it. So this is the benefit of looking at like both ways of clearing and detoxing, doing nervous system work, somatic therapy, like all the different things that are available to help process the mental emotional aspects that are seen and unseen in the body. And so, for example, say somebody comes in and maybe they have high blood pressure or something like that. Liver can be involved, or, they've got some stress, they're frustrated, they're irritable, they're not sleeping well. They're waking up between 1 and 3 in the morning, which is the liver time. And all the organs have a 24-hour cycle. So if somebody's waking up between 1 and 3 in the morning, it's often the liver is really congested or irritable or inflamed in some way. So that's a way to, and you can look this up online. There's a 24-hour clock. You can see all the organs on there and maybe get some clues about your symptoms. But if we come back to the liver,
that's such a great resource.
If you start working on the liver, it's probably going to release some of the stuck emotions there. And so what I would say is like, don't waste the opportunity for the anger. And so if it comes up, you are aware, and a lot of people may not even be aware, like their spouse or their friends might be like, hey dude, what's going on with you today?
Jerk today.
Yeah. And so if you have a moment to slow down and take a breath, you could go into it a little bit more of, what am I actually feeling here? And why might this be stuck in my system in the first place? Oh yeah, there was that time that this thing happened and I didn't stand up for myself, or I didn't put a good boundary in place and it really felt taken advantage of. And I got really angry about that, but I didn't do anything with it. I just buried it down because I didn't want to deal with it at the time, or I didn't have the skill sets, or I didn't understand. But when you understand, then you can actually process it. And you know what? Maybe later that afternoon, you have a bunch of grief and tears and it starts opening that entire pathway. You've now just given that physical detox that you did way more capacity. And it'll be way more effective because you're looking at both sides compared to just one or the other. Because we do need physical support too.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. So from a supplement perspective, and none of this is medical advice, right?
Yeah.
From a sup perspective, is it like, I've heard chicory root, I've heard of like walnuts, licorice. Where do we start with supplements for liver? Knowing that we also get to fill in the other side of the coin with letting our emotions go and being aware of those emotions. Like, they're equally important to the supplements, is what I'm hearing from you.
Yeah.
But just a handful of supplements that could really logistically start to slowly and safely detox the liver, what would those be?
Maybe one of the first ones, and yeah, you mentioned it's not medical advice. Milk.
I hate that we have to say that.
I know,
you're literally
ridiculous.
Seeing patients in a clinic, and we have to go, this is not medical advice.
I did learn some things.
Yeah.
So before I answer that, I also want to just remind everybody that we're holistic beings. And this is one of the things I've loved about Chinese medicine is you always treat the whole person, because so much of the time we like to pull one thing and apply it to that aspect of the body and ignore all the rest. So whatever I say, I just want people to take it in that one thing is not good for everybody, and something that may help somebody else and be really effective actually may be a little bit hard on somebody's system.
Yeah.
So I've seen that with liver detoxes, just, over the counter stuff or the things that you could buy online. or get from your herbalist or something like that. It may or may not be appropriate. In some cases where the liver was so congested and stuck at a really deep level, then they would get on a liver cleanse or some kind of protocol. It might actually inflame and aggravate the liver to a large degree because they need really deep care there, and they need to go way slower, and they need to take it in a much gentler approach kind of fashion to be able to open it up slowly. Because if you come in pretty heavy-handed with some of the detoxes that are available, that might not suit your constitution, or it might not serve you in your time of life. Just like you said, I don't feel like coffee enemas are the best for me right now.
Yeah, they feel too intense.
And that is actually really deep wisdom and intuition that I often coach people to listen to that. And if I say, hey, do this thing, I think this could be good for you, I tell my patients, if that doesn't feel right, tell me. Let's get curious about that, and let's slow down of why might that be. And it's like, oh, you're going into a massive job interview next week. You're thinking of quitting your job. And I'm saying, hey, let's get in there and start doing a pretty big detox. And I'm a little bit nervous about that. And I'm like, oh, hey, thanks for telling me. That's good advice. Don't do that.
Yeah.
Or you're going into, a really big push in your career or something like that. Maybe do something a bit more gentle, take your time. So if I was to recommend something that generally would check the boxes for a lot of people, it may not be appropriate for everybody, but for the liver, I love milk thistle. Milk thistle is detoxifying for the liver, but it's not too harsh for most people. Fairly gentle as far as herbals go. It's also mildly protective for the liver cells. So you get a bit of a regenerative nature happening there and a bit of detoxing. So I'll say for me, that has been an herb that I've used from time to time in my life where I felt I was getting a little bit of congestion there, or maybe just from a preventative point of view that, hey, I could take this and I could take it for a few weeks, or I could even take it for a few months based on my own feeling, my own intuition, and my own intellectual understanding of some of the herbal medicine. That the ultimate way to do some of this work is to work with a pro. Work with somebody that understands the whole body, that can give you an outside perspective of, hey, you know what? I see that we got to do some liver work, but let's actually get the lymphatics up and running a little bit. Let's get you doing a bit of breath work. Let's actually get you seeing a somatic therapist because you're holding so much rage and anger right now. Your liver is like a clenched fist that I could try and soften with some herbs, but you're probably going to have a much greater and faster effect, even maybe addressing the nervous system. And then let's start processing some of the physical stuff. Let's do some acupuncture, get a massage, maybe get some lymphatic massage or drainage, and, jumping on the trampoline a little bit, or there's all these other modalities that are pretty widely accessible if you look online. There's a lot of information that you can take in, but don't jump on everything right away. Feel your own wisdom and intuition. I think that's actually where we're at in society right now, is we need to start coming back into contact with our own wisdom. Yeah,
it's funny. I asked you an intellectual question. I'm like, so doc, where do we start with the supplements on the liver? And you're like, well, do all this, feel it, which is the common thread in our podcast. And the one way that I've always thought about this is like, if we have so many systems in our body that are all designed to be in harmony with each other, they're all designed for homeostasis, right? This middle point, this Goldilocks zone in us. What's the sister of the liver or the brother of the liver? Like what's one of the systems or one of the other organs that really matches nicely and plays nicely with the liver to where you might start next?
Yeah, great question. So there's a few ways to look at this as well. The spleen would be the one that's talked about a lot in Chinese medicine because these represent two beautiful different elements. The liver is wood element and the spleen is earth. And to have good balance, it's like a tree standing tall in the forest. It needs good rooting into the earth, and they support each other. So all of the things that support a tree come up from the earth. But a tree can also hold the earth in place so it doesn't erode, or, if you imagine a riverbank, there could be a beautiful, strong tree there. It's going to anchor that in and hold that and support it really well. So you can imagine the liver and the spleen toggle energy back and forth and mutually support each other. Physiologically, the spleen is completely tied into the lymphatic network of the entire body, which also happens to be a massive detox pathway and entire system for everything. So between the spleen and the liver, those are really, really key organs. And those happen to be the two organs that tend to come out of balance the most in Chinese medicine. From a quantitative analysis point of view, we'd call it liver and spleen disharmony would be one of the translated sayings. And that may not mean anything to anybody out there except for Chinese medicine practitioners or people that have studied this. I get it. But if there's a disharmony between those two organs, they're going to affect each other. So if the liver is angry and irritable and there's a lot of congestion or that filter is blocked up quite a bit, it starts dragging on the energy of the spleen a lot, and it will exhaust the spleen energy. And suddenly it's not going to be able to keep up with how much energy your body actually needs. So opening up the liver a little bit, getting it moving, getting it flowing, offloading some emotion, processing some emotion will actually take some pressure off the spleen. And what that actually does physiologically is it helps the lymph move through your body a little bit more easily and actually helps you detox more effectively.
What's the primary function of the spleen? What's its job?
Well, I'll speak from a Chinese medicine point of view first. Mm-hmm. The spleen builds qi. So it builds vital force energy for the body. So the idea is you breathe in air, you take in food, goes through the digestion, breaks down the nutrients, and a lot of we call it clear qi in Chinese medicine. It's all these cool terms. I can't believe I still remember some of them, but it takes that clear energy and it passes it onto the spleen, and the spleen puts it into usable form of vital force that then can be used throughout the whole system. The spleen also has a massive impact on digestion, which is, I think, in large part why we have so many digestive issues collectively now from toxins and everything else. But the spleen's role is also to help manage the mind of all things.
That's fascinating. How does it do that?
So from a mechanism point of view, and again, I'll reference Chinese medicine, mm-hmm. You know how I mentioned each of the emotions are connected to a different organ. Yeah. So we'll round them out for everybody. Kidneys is more fear. Lungs tends to be more grief and sadness. The spleen is overthinking. Also translated to excessive contemplation. So, we're weaving this back together as a society, the mentalization of so many things, the spleen's exhausted because we are calling on that energy way more than we ever have before because we're on screens 24/7. I don't think there's ever been a time in human history where you have like 10 different ways to communicate with people, which is beautiful in some ways.
Yeah.
But if you're checking your text, your WhatsApp, your Signal, your Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, whatever, that is a lot of work for the spleen to remain intellectual a lot and take in a lot of stimulus. It needs to feed that. Where do you think the energy comes from? It comes from your body feeding the mind.
Yeah.
So if you're exhausting the mind with overstimulating it, overthinking, the spleen's like taking one for the team and the spleen's becoming exhausted, which then starts blocking up the lymph flow of the body because stuff starts accumulating there. And it starts getting stuck in a bad way.
If you love that video, you'll love the one on the screen right now. Click the one on the screen and enjoy.